"You're such an idiot," my father yelled straight to my face after I lost to my younger brother in a major lawsuit in court. But what happened afterward was the real nightmare. My name is Austin Brooks, 32 years old, a lawyer living in Asheville, North Carolina. People say I'm upright, talented, but few know the scars in my heart, scars that stem from my own family. Sitting in my small apartment, with the yellow light casting shadows on the walls, I often think back to the old days, when everything began. My family was poor, so poor that dinner sometimes consisted of only stale bread and watery soup. My father, Harold, was a car mechanic, always irritable because money was never enough. My mother, Diane, was a supermarket cashier, gentle but constantly worried. We lived in an old wooden house on the outskirts of Asheville with peeling walls and a roof that leaked every time it rained. I was the eldest, followed by Caleb, my brother, 4 years younger. Caleb, the name my parents always mentioned with sparkling eyes, as if he were the only light in our home. I don't remember exactly when I realized I was being pushed to the sidelines. Maybe it was when I was 5, when I wanted a red toy car at the grocery store. I grabbed my mother's hand, pointed at it, my eyes shining with excitement. She patted my head, giving me a sad smile. "Let's save it for Caleb, okay? You're a big boy now." Caleb was only 1 at the time, not even able to hold a toy car. That red car ended up in his crib, and I learned to smile, pretending I didn't care. As we grew older, the favoritism became more apparent. Caleb was spoiled by our parents, from new clothes to fancy toys. I wore hand-me-downs, patched and worn, but I didn't dare complain. Once I asked my father why he didn't buy me new shoes, and he snapped, "You're old enough, figure it out yourself. Caleb's younger, he needs it more." I was 10, Caleb was 6. I told myself maybe he's right, he's still little, and I'm the older brother, I should let him have it. But giving in became a habit, a festering wound. At school I excelled, always at the top of my class, but my parents rarely praised me. If Caleb got a B, my mother would hug him, beaming, "My boy is so smart." When I brought home a scholarship, my father only nodded and said, "Good, but don't get cocky." I tried harder, thinking that if I became even better, they'd notice. But no, their eyes were always on Caleb. When I was 15, I found out Caleb was selling e-cigarettes to his school friends. Back then, e-cigarettes were illegal for students, a serious offense. Worried for him, I dragged Caleb home and told our parents. I thought they'd discipline him, but my mother just patted his head and said, "You know how to make money, so clever." My father laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Smart kid, but be careful." As for me, my father gave me a cold, sharp look. "Don't be a snitch and ruin things for your brother." I stood there speechless, feeling like I'd done something wrong. By the time I got to college, the unfairness was undeniable. I dreamed of becoming a lawyer, but we had no money. I applied for scholarships, tutored, waited tables, sometimes working until 2 in the morning, my feet aching, just to cover tuition. Caleb was different. My parents poured all their savings, even took out loans to get him into a prestigious law school. Caleb lived comfortably, buying nice clothes, dining at restaurants, while I survived on instant noodles in my dorm. Once I called home and asked my mother if they needed me to send money. She laughed. "No need, you take care of yourself. Caleb's the one who needs it, he's our hope." I didn't blame Caleb, he was a kid raised in overwhelming love. But every time I heard my mother call him our hope, my heart felt like it was being crushed. I wondered, what was I to them? An older brother who had to sacrifice, or just Caleb's shadow? I graduated from law school at the top of my class, but my parents didn't attend my graduation. They were busy taking Caleb to tour graduate schools. I stood alone in the crowd, diploma in hand, fighting back tears. I told myself, it's okay. I'll prove my worth. Not for them, but for me. In the years that followed, I worked as a lawyer, lived frugally, and sent money home to help my parents fix the house and pay off debts. They took the money, thanked me briefly, but never asked how I was doing. Caleb was different. He became a lawyer too, but chose a different path. defending anyone who paid well regardless of right or wrong. He bought a luxury car, lived in a high-end apartment, and bragged about his success. My parents were proud, boasting to the neighbors, "Our Caleb is so talented, so wealthy." As for me, they only said, "Austin, he's doing all right, just a lawyer." Then one day, my brother and I faced off in a lawsuit. It was the biggest case of my career since I became a lawyer. The case took place in Burlington, Vermont. A chemical company was accused of dumping toxic waste into the river, causing severe pollution. Hundreds of families lost access to clean water. Children fell ill. Farmland turned barren and lives were upended. I represented them, the poor, forgotten people pushed to the margins of society. To me, this wasn't just a case. It was a vow I'd made to myself to bring justice to light no matter the cost. And Caleb, my younger brother, stood on the opposite side. He represented the chemical company backed by a large team of lawyers, shiny leather briefcases, and a dense network of power. I knew the company was guilty. Environmental reports, scientific data, witness testimonies, everything pointed against them. But Caleb didn't care. To him, this was just another lucrative deal, a chance to buy another luxury car or book a stay at a lavish resort. I met Caleb at a pre-trial meeting. He walked in, his tailored suit impeccable, a confident smile on his face. "Big brother," he called, his tone half joking, half mocking, "why do you always make things so hard for yourself? Let me have this one and we'll both be better off." I looked into his eyes, searching for a trace of remorse, but all I saw was arrogance. "Caleb," I said, my voice steady, "this isn't a game. Those people are suffering." He smirked, patting my shoulder as if I were a naive child. "Justice? Money is justice, bro." His words cut like a knife. I remembered the days when we were kids, when I gave up everything for him. Toys, opportunities, even our parents' love. But this time I couldn't yield. Not because I wanted to beat Caleb, but because the people of Burlington deserved to be protected. News of the lawsuit reached our parents. One evening, my mother called, asking me to come home for dinner, her voice as sweet as it was when I was a child. I drove through the familiar roads of Asheville's outskirts, my heart torn between hope and dread. Stepping into the house, the smell of my mother's freshly baked cookies was as comforting as ever, but the atmosphere was heavy. My father sat in his armchair, his face stern. Caleb was already there in a silk shirt, his watch glinting under the light. My mother pulled me to sit down, poured me water, and began. "Austin," she said, her eyes pleading, "drop this lawsuit for Caleb's sake. This is a big opportunity for your brother. If he wins, he'll advance and he'll have enough money to take care of the whole family." I froze, the glass of water in my hand icy cold. "Mom," I replied, trying to stay calm, "this isn't about family. That company did wrong and they need to be held accountable." My father slammed the table, his voice booming. "You're a damn fool. Are you trying to ruin your brother, to ruin this family? Do you care more about strangers than your own blood?" I looked at him, my heart aching. Once again, they were asking me to sacrifice, to step aside so Caleb could shine. My mother chimed in, echoing my father. "Austin, are you jealous of your brother? Caleb is your family, and family sticks together. There are plenty of other cases out there. Let this one go." Her words were like salt in an old wound. Jealous? I'd spent my whole life stepping back, doing everything to make them proud, but they never saw it. Caleb sat there, smirking. "Austin, you always play the fake hero. You know I'm going to win, right? A broke lawyer like you can't compete with my team." I looked at him, wanting to say something, but my throat tightened. I stood up, my voice hoarse. "This is about justice, not family. I'm not backing down." I left the house, rain pelting my face, cold and stinging. In the car, I sat motionless, listening to the rain tap against the windshield. When I was young, every time I let Caleb have his way, I told myself it was my duty as the older brother. But now, I wasn't so sure. If justice was the path I'd chosen, why did I feel so alone? In the days that followed, I poured everything into the case. I met with the families in Burlington, listening to their stories of sick children and withered fields. Each story was a reason to keep going, but every night when I returned to my small apartment, I saw my reflection on the wall. Alone. My father didn't call. My mother didn't text. Caleb, meanwhile, sent mocking messages. "Get ready to lose, big bro." I knew this lawsuit wasn't just about fighting the company or Caleb, it was about fighting my own family. I didn't want to lose them, but I couldn't betray what I believed in. Sitting in my office, staring at a towering stack of documents, I wondered, did I have the strength to hold on to both justice and my family? Or would I lose everything? The lawsuit dragged on longer than I expected. 3 months passed, and every day was an uphill battle. I did everything. Gathered evidence, called witnesses, analyzed environmental reports. But the chemical company, with its bottomless pockets, played dirty. They bribed witnesses, falsified documents, and hired the best lawyers to twist the truth. Caleb, my brother, led their team, his confident smile never fading. On the day of the verdict, I sat silently, my hands clenched. The judge read his decision, his voice steady. The chemical company was not guilty. There was insufficient evidence to convict. Murmurs erupted from the Burlington families. A father looked at me, his eyes red, shaking his head in disappointment. A 7-year-old girl tugged at her mother's hand, asking, "Why did they win, Mom?" I couldn't answer. I just bowed my head, feeling like the world had collapsed. I had promised them, promised myself that justice would prevail. But money won. Caleb walked over, patted my shoulder, and smirked. "Big brother, I told you. Justice doesn't buy luxury cars." I looked at him, wanting to say something, but my throat was bitter with defeat. I didn't lose because I was less skilled, but because I lacked the power that money brings. The news spread quickly. The press criticized the company, but no one could do anything. I returned to Asheville, carrying the weight of failure. My office was silent. No flowers, no thank you letters, just dim light. I thought of the families in Burlington, the children still drinking contaminated water, the barren fields. I had tried, but my efforts weren't enough. Then my mother called. Her voice was gentle, like when I was a child. "Austin, come home for dinner. It's been a while since you've been back." I was stunned. After months of cold silence, I thought maybe they wanted to comfort me, to mend things. I drove through the familiar roads, a flicker of hope in my heart. The old wooden house came into view, the smell of my mother's baked cookies wafting in the air. I stepped inside, my heart racing, longing for a hug, a word of encouragement. But I was wrong. My father sat in his armchair, his face smug. Caleb was already there in a silk shirt, his watch glinting. My mother set a plate of roast meat on the table, smiling at Caleb. "My boy, you did so well winning such a big case." I stood there, frozen. My father looked at me, sneering. "So, Austin, thought you were a hero? Lost the case, and now you see how stupid you are?" I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "I just wanted to do what's right," I said, my voice hoarse. "That company is guilty, Dad, you know it." Caleb laughed loudly, cutting me off. "Do what's right." "You're right. And what do you have now? No money, no fame, just the title of a failed lawyer." My mother chimed in, her tone reproachful. "Austin, why didn't you listen to me? If you'd let Caleb have it, everything would have been fine. Now what? You lost and you've embarrassed the whole family." Their words cut like knives. I had lost the case, lost the trust of the Burlington families, and now my own family was mocking me. I thought of the sleepless nights preparing documents, the times I sent money home to help my parents, the years I gave way to Caleb. All of it, in exchange for nothing but scorn. "I thought you called me here to comfort me," I said, my eyes stinging. But I was wrong. My father shouted, "Comfort? You don't deserve it. Caleb is the pride of this family." My mother turned away, avoiding my gaze. Caleb smirked. "Go home, Austin. Don't ruin our happy family dinner." I stood there, my heart shattered. I wanted to scream, to tell them about my sacrifices, but I knew they'd never listen. I left the house, rain pelting my face, icy cold. In the car, I sat motionless, listening to the rain tap against the windshield. I remembered the old days when I gave Caleb the red toy car when I worked extra jobs so he could attend a good school. I had lived my whole life for my family, but now I was just a failure in their eyes. Months passed and my parents didn't bother contacting me. For Thanksgiving, I wasn't invited. My father's birthday came and went without me. I heard Caleb bragging everywhere about his victory, calling me a delusional lawyer who only chased dreams. I didn't argue back. I just sat in my small apartment watching the rain fall, asking myself, what did I do wrong? The justice I pursued, why has it left me so alone? A year passed since the Burlington lawsuit, but the wound in my heart still hadn't healed. I lived quietly, continuing my work as a lawyer in Asheville, taking on small cases to help the underprivileged. Each day I tried to focus on justice, but the pain from my family lingered. My parents didn't call. Caleb didn't reach out. I was like a stranger in the very home I'd sacrificed my youth to build. Then one evening my phone buzzed. It was my mother's number. My heart raced, a mix of hope and fear. I answered, and her voice was frantic. "Austin, Caleb's in big trouble. You have to help him." I froze, my hand tightening around the phone. "What happened?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Choking back tears, she said, "Caleb's been arrested. They say he's involved in money laundering, taking bribes. Please, Austin, save your brother." I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Caleb, the brother who always bragged about his luxury cars and high-end apartment, was now entangled in crime. I wasn't surprised, but my heart still ached. I remembered when he sold e-cigarettes at 15, the way he smirked when he beat me in Burlington. He had chosen the path of money, and now that path had led him to a dead end. I drove to my parents' house that night. The old wooden house looked more dilapidated than ever, the roof leaking, the walls stained. My mother opened the door, her eyes swollen and red, and hugged me tightly. "Austin, thank you for coming," she sobbed. My father sat in his armchair, his face gaunt, avoiding my gaze. The air was heavy, as if the entire family was drowning in despair. My mother explained, her voice trembling. Caleb had taken bribes from a wealthy client, a smuggling kingpin, to cover up evidence of crimes. But the plan fell apart, and the police traced the evidence back to him. Caleb was arrested, now in a detention center, facing prison time. "He didn't mean to," she said, clutching my hand. "Caleb just wanted to make money, to take care of the family. You're a lawyer, Austin. Please defend him. I'm begging you." I looked at my mother, then at my father. Memories flooded back. The times they defended Caleb, the mockery when I lost the lawsuit, the Thanksgivings I wasn't invited to. Now, with Caleb fallen, they turned to me. I wanted to help, not for Caleb, but for my mother, my father, for the scraps of family we had left. But as a lawyer, I knew I couldn't defend wrongdoing. "I can't," I said, my voice low. "Caleb broke the law, Mom. I can't defend a crime." My mother froze, letting go of my hand. "What are you saying? He's your brother. You're abandoning him?" My father slammed the table, roaring, "You're a traitor! You're letting your brother go to prison. You're no son of mine." His words cut like a blade. I'd heard them before, but this time they were sharper, more painful. I tried to explain, "I'm not abandoning Caleb, but I'm a lawyer. I have principles. I'll find him a good lawyer, I promise." But my mother wouldn't listen. She sobbed, pointing at me. "You're destroying this family, Austin. You lost the lawsuit, and now you're abandoning your brother. Are you even human?" I stood there, my heart shattered. I wanted to scream, to tell them about the years I stepped aside, the money I sent home, the nights I worked myself to exhaustion. But I stayed silent. I knew they only saw Caleb, only cared about Caleb. Before I left, my mother handed me a letter from Caleb. I opened it, his handwriting shaky. "Austin, are you happy now? You always wanted to see me fail, didn't you? Hypocrite." My hands trembled as I read. I had never wanted Caleb to fail. I only wanted him to live rightly, as I had tried to do my whole life. I left the house, rain falling again, just like the night they mocked me after the lawsuit. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel, tears streaming down my face. I had lost my family, not today, but long ago. I wondered, was I wrong for not helping Caleb? Was the justice I pursued worth sacrificing everything for? About 6 months later, I heard that Caleb had been sentenced to 5 years in prison. The verdict came on a cold morning, but I didn't go to the courthouse. I couldn't bear to see my brother, the brother I'd given up so much for during our childhood, standing behind the defendant's dock. I sat in my office in Asheville, watching the rain fall outside the window, learning the news from a colleague. "Caleb's done for," he said, his voice tinged with pity. I nodded but said nothing. Inside, everything had been broken for a long time. My parents completely cut me off after that night. I refused to defend Caleb. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I texted my father. He didn't reply. Once I drove by the old wooden house and saw my mother watering plants in the yard. I stopped the car intending to get out, but she turned and went inside, slamming the door. That action hurt more than any harsh words. I was no longer their son. I tried sending money as I had for years. I transferred funds with a note. "I just want to help." But the money was returned without explanation. I heard from neighbors that my parents were struggling. My father had stopped working due to illness, and my mother took on extra night shifts at the supermarket. I wanted to help, to fix the leaking roof, to buy medicine for my father, but they wouldn't give me the chance. They chose to live in hardship rather than accept anything from me. Loneliness enveloped me. I lived in my small apartment where every night was lit only by a yellow lamp and the sound of rain. I had no family, no Thanksgiving, no Christmas. I remembered the old days when Caleb and I were kids playing together in the yard, opening presents under the Christmas tree. I remembered my mother's smile, my father's laughter. But now, those were just memories, distant like a dream. I asked myself, where did I go wrong? I chose justice, chose principles, but why was the cost so steep? Every night I sat at my desk looking at an old family photo. Caleb stood in the center, beaming. My parents hugged him, their eyes sparkling. And there I was in the corner, forcing a smile. I had always been the outsider from the very beginning. Friends and colleagues tried to comfort me. They said I was right, that Caleb brought this upon himself, that my parents were unfair. But those words didn't soothe me. I didn't want to hear that I was right. I just wanted my family, even once, to look at me with respect. I continued my work, but my faith wavered. I still took on small cases, helping the poor, but every time I stepped into a courtroom, I remembered Burlington, the defeat, the disappointed eyes of the families I'd promised to protect. I wondered, did the justice I pursued really change anything? Or was it just a naive dream, as Caleb had mocked? Late at night, I sat alone, listening to the rain tap on the roof. I didn't regret refusing to defend Caleb. I didn't regret fighting in Burlington, even though I lost. But I hurt. Hurt because my family turned their backs on me. Hurt because I couldn't be both an upright lawyer and the son and brother they wanted. I looked out the window, the rain still falling, and I wondered, would there ever be a day when my parents understood me? Or would I forever be the lonely one, carrying a justice no one needed? The rain still falls in Asheville, but I've started to learn how to live with the pain. My family has left me behind, but I couldn't let myself sink into darkness forever. I returned to my work, taking on small cases, helping those no one else notices. A single mother evicted from her home, a worker cheated out of wages. Each victory, however small, was a spark of light, reminding me that the justice I pursued wasn't meaningless. One day, I received an invitation from my old law school. They wanted me to teach a course on legal ethics. I was stunned. Me, the one once called a failed lawyer, now invited to stand before students? I agreed, not for recognition, but because I wanted to share what I'd learned from my scars. The classroom was packed, young eyes watching me eagerly. I spoke about Burlington, about Caleb, about my family. I didn't hide my failures or my pain. Justice doesn't always win, I said, but if you give up, it never has a chance. The students clapped and a few stayed after class to ask for advice. A girl with her hair tied high said, "I grew up in a struggling family too. I want to be like you, but I'm afraid of failing." I looked at her, remembering myself at 18 working to exhaustion to afford law school. "Be afraid," I replied, "but don't let fear stop you from trying." She smiled and I saw a glimmer of hope, not just for her, but for me too. I started writing a book about legal ethics. I wrote late at night as rain tapped on the window. I wrote about cases, difficult choices, and losses. The book was published, not a bestseller, but enough to earn thank you letters from young lawyers. One wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to turn down a wrongful case. Thank you." I read it, my eyes stinging, feeling the wound in my heart ease just a little. I got involved in charity, helping poor children afford school. I met kids like I once was, bright-eyed but burdened with worry. I shared my story, encouraging them to study, to dream big. A 12-year-old boy grabbed my hand and said, "I want to be a lawyer like you." I ruffled his hair, smiling. "Then keep at it, I believe in you." My life slowly stabilized. I bought a small house on the outskirts of Asheville with a garden and a white picket fence. I planted flowers, watered them every morning, finding joy in simple things. I stopped waiting for calls from my parents, stopped hoping Caleb would reach out. I learned to forgive, not for them, but for myself. I was still alone, but I no longer feared that loneliness. I began to feel faith again. Justice, though difficult, was still worth fighting for. On mornings when sunlight streamed through the window, I felt stronger. I was no longer the boy who gave up everything for his brother, no longer the son craving his parents' approval. I was Austin Brooks, a lawyer, a teacher, a man living for what he believed in. Sitting in my garden, I watched clouds drift slowly across the Asheville sky. My book lay on the table beside a cold cup of coffee. I thought about my journey, from the days of yielding to Caleb, the nights working to exhaustion, to the Burlington case and the rift with my family. I thought about Caleb now somewhere in prison and my parents perhaps still living in the old wooden house, holding on to their resentment toward me. I wondered, were the things I did right? I chose justice, refused to defend Caleb, refused to back down in Burlington, but the cost was my family, something I once thought would last forever. I didn't regret it, but the pain remained, like a scar that never fully heals. I helped many people, from poor families to young students, but I couldn't help my own family. Was justice worth sacrificing everything? I don't have the answer. Some nights I dream of my mother hugging me, my father patting my shoulder, Caleb laughing like he did back then. I wake up, eyes wet, but I know those days won't return. I can only move forward carrying the belief that, though justice isn't perfect, it's a flame worth keeping alive. If you were me, what would you do? Would you yield to keep your family or stand up for justice, knowing the cost is isolation? Would you forgive those who turned their backs, or learn to live without them? I don't know what you'd choose, but I hope, whatever you decide, you find peace, as I'm trying to do every day.